Welcome to the Fit Girl Magic podcast. If you are ready to find your inner magic, develop great habits, and a rock steady mindset to feel confident, comfortable, and fit in your body, you are in the right place. I am Kim Barnes Jefferson, and I'll be giving you weekly doses of health, fitness, and life tips sprinkled with humor and real talk. If you're ready to be consistent without the stress of perfection, magic makers, it's time to slip into your favorite pair of PJs, grab some coffee, kick back, and listen to today's show. Hey Magic Makers, it's this week's iTunes review. Amy W. Fitness says, Kim knows her stuff. Keeps it real on all levels. 5 stars. Awesome podcast series on relatable topics that women deal with. Kim's advice, along with her sense of humor, is what everyone needs to find their fit girl magic. Well, thank you so much, Amy W. Fitness. That warms my heart. If you haven't yet left your review, please head over to iTunes or wherever you listen to your podcast and hit rate. And then hopefully it's a 5-star hint and leave me a review. Thanks. Hey, Magic Makers, it's Kim. And today's conversation, I want to talk about dealing with life's challenges. And I wanted to have the conversation because let's just face it, we all want life to come up roses, right? Everything is coming up roses. Everything is a, 80s sitcom movie or a John Hughes movie. And we all know that it works out. And here's the thing, right? If 2020 taught us anything, it taught us that sometimes life comes at us fast and that there are things that we can't control despite everything being lined up, right? All the stars are in alignment. And then all it takes is just like one random act to just like throw chaos into my life. And so the one thing I always try to share with my clients, I share with you, is that we all, especially when it comes to getting healthy and fit, we think, I start this plan and I'm going to do all the steps. And when I finish all the steps, bada boom, bada bang, I'm going to get the results. And we never stop and think that, you might take 2 steps and then life happens and you end up taking 3 steps back or 10 steps back or, whatever it is. But here's where I always try to challenge my clients, and I'm going to challenge you, is that there are certain things that always seem to trip us up, right? What are they? When you're trying to go for a goal, what are the things that always seem to trip you up? And let's start to anticipate that so that we can start to pre-program in our brain options, right? Everyone likes options. So how do we come up with options so that, psychologists calls it if-then thinking, right? If this happens, then I'm going to do that. So, one of the biggest things I always tell people is like working out. So if I have to have it in my calendar, and if I don't have it in my calendar, then it doesn't happen. So I always have a lot of if-thens. So I typically work out on Monday, Wednesdays, Thursdays, and Saturday. That's my typical workout schedule. And from time to time, life. So I say, if I'm unable to work out on, say, Monday, then I will work out on Sunday. If I'm unable to work out on Wednesday, then I will work out on Saturday, right? So it's like knowing that life's going to happen, right? It's not going to every week's not going to look exactly the same. But when it doesn't look the same, what are the other things I can do instead? And it's not in a beat myself up. It's kind of like, well, hey, it's like if you're at the grocery store and they don't have bananas and you wanted fruit. You're like, they don't have bananas. So I guess I'll have to buy, and you'll pick some other fruit that you'll buy instead of bananas. All right. I think I beat that horse into the barn. Not that I beat horses. All right. So here's what challenges do. They help you to develop perspective, right? Because they teach you how to appreciate the gifts and the blessings that we are all giving. Because without the lows, how can we compare where we've come from? And a few podcasts ago, I talked about my mindset overhaul. And if I couldn't look back and see how far I've come, I wouldn't realize like how much I've changed. I might still feel like I'm in that place, but I want you to start thinking about, as we are, go through this podcast, really start to think about, how far you've come from maybe who you used to be in the past, because those challenges help you to become stronger, right? You learn how to confront a problem and solve it versus, if, life was always like handed to you on a silver platter, you wouldn't gather up, that grit, that fortitude, that resilience that that you could get knocked down and bounce yourself back up. It helps you to build that confidence in your ability to just stand on your own 2 feet and know that, when life does throw you that curveball, you're like, you know what? I might be like a little dazed and confused, but I know that once the ringing in my ears stop, I can come back. It might take me, I might not bounce back immediately, but I know that I can bounce back, right? So here's where, that mindset shift has to happen, right? Mindset is like one of the 4 pillars of weight loss. So many people think that it's like counting your calories and, doing 4 hours of CrossFit. No, it's saying to yourself that every challenge that you face is an opportunity to learn, right? It's an opportunity to say that I went down this path and it didn't freaking work. And so now I have the opportunity to, go to the right versus going to the left. Think about, those mazes that they create, here in New England, they create them every fall in like corn fields, and they like carve out paths and you have to, find your way through the maze. That terrifies me, but I do feel like you can overcome obstacles without going through that maze. I think it terrifies me because if you ever saw the movie The Shining, yeah, I think that I saw that my mom is really into horror, and she had me when she was 20, so she didn't really have any like good sense, and so I watched The Shining too young, and so I just can't with that. And with other challenges, it helps to build up your emotional reserve so that when you face obstacles, you can tap into this, well of like, what, I've been down this road before and I know what I need to do to push myself up the hill, or I know what resources I can tap into to get myself out of this place. And it's like, that's where, I think many of us, it's a tough place to be because, sometimes when you're in that dazed and confused place, you just feel like I should just sit my butt down. And sometimes that's the best course of action. Just because you rest doesn't mean you're out. I remember during my whole mindset journey, my coach at the time, she said, Kim, she's like, resting doesn't mean you're giving up. And she said, think about it. If you are a long haul trucker and they crisscross the country, do you think they start in Boston and drive straight through to California? No, they pull into a rest stop. They close their eyes. They regenerate, right? They rest in a restoration. That's what sometimes you need to do, because sometimes in the rest, that's when I can start to make better decisions. And one of the things that Rona has taught me so well, and I'm grateful, and it's something that I remind myself of regularly, is that Rona taught me that I don't always have to be busy. And prior to Rona, I was just like, go, 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 go. Everything was like scheduled to the umpteenth second. And I always found myself, feeling behind because I was so over scheduled. And I didn't find myself having time for reflection, having time to just be like, I'm just going to sit on my butt tonight, and not have the like, well, I'm sitting on my butt tonight and I really should be doing blah, 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 blah. Right. Anyone else have those like enoughness thoughts? Well, since Rona, and it forced me to sit down. It forced me to say, you know what, when I was in my quiet time, I was more reflective. And, I did a podcast all about toxic relationships. And we talked about, being able to get into the quiet, getting to that space where you could just like
see things clearly versus when I'm always running and running and running, it's hard for me to see things clearly. And challenges, help us to extend our comfort zone, right? We've all seen those memes or motivational graphics that talk about, challenge, getting out of your comfort zone, life begins outside of your comfort zone. Well, challenges force you to do new things. They force you to think in new ways that you thought maybe didn't exist before, or maybe thought made you feel uncomfortable. And when you step out of your comfort zone, it does force you to accept your problems and decide how you're going to face them. And it expands the possibilities of your future self. And it also builds that resilience tank. It just starts to put that resilience reserve, if you will. I don't know how you drive your car, but I am of the philosophy that, when the, fill the fuel light comes on, for me, I know I have about 30 miles before I really need gas. And so I immediately, in my car, change the odometer. And I know okay, when I get to truly get to 15 miles, I need to really start thinking about getting gas. And so that's what, some of these challenges do is it helps to build up that reserve tank so that when that yellow light does come on, you're been here. I know I got about 15 miles and I got this. Okay. That's what I want you to start thinking about when, you do hit those challenges. And challenges adapt as we move on, right? As we become stronger, we become more resilient. It's, what do they say? New level, new devil, right? So as we grow in our lives, as we become more self-aware, as each time we move up our levels, we're just going to get a new set of challenges that arise. Now, and because we've built this resilience tank, we've faced the adversity, we've faced the challenges before. It doesn't seem as bleeping scary as when we started on our journey. I think about every time I think about this journey, and I'm going to laugh. So I've never seen Lord of the Rings, but I know the story, right? So Bilbo Baggins, right? I use him all the damn time. Bilbo Baggins, he wasn't exactly Captain America, who you could ring his doorbell and you knew Captain America would be like, I'm down, whatever you want, whatever you need. Let me just grab my shield. Let's do this. That wasn't Bilbo Baggins. So most of us are Bilbo Baggins. We're we just want to stay in our little hut and live there forever. And I get that, right? But sometimes you got to go on that adventure. If you want something different in your life, you are going to have to go on that adventure, and you have to decide, what is that ring? What is the ring that you're looking for? Because so many people, and this will come up later in the podcast, but so many people will say to me, I see them working so hard. And I'm like, what are you working for? And I get this blank stare, you're supposed to work out, right? Well, what are you working towards? How will you know that you've reached success, right? Bilbo Baggins knew when he found that damn ring, he'd find success. After going through the mud and all that other stuff, that's how he would find success. So that's what I want you to ask yourself, how are you going to find success? Because when I'm looking for something, when I face these challenges, it tells me that nothing is impossible, right? I think Adidas used that whole impossible phrasing for their branding. And it's when you start to stand up and you start to realize, anything's possible. And if you've been following me for a while, I've used this analogy before, and I'm going to continue to use it forever until something else comes along. And for me, my fitness journey started when the Red Sox won the World Series in 2004. And before that, if you aren't a diehard Red Sox fan, the Red Sox hadn't won the World Series in 86 years. And they had come close so many times. And I remember I'm traveling in Chicago, and I'm a woman, and I'm in a bar, and I'm watching the game. And they're playing against the Yankees till, game 7 to go to the World Series. And, we've been to this prom before, and we haven't won the crown, right? We found ourselves crying in the bathroom. And I was like, we need more runs. And like people looked at me, they're like, you don't know. And I'm like, dude, I'm a Red Sox fan. We could blow a 20-0 lead. We can easily find a way to blow a 20-0 lead. And so when the Red Sox did go on to win the World Series, I was like, you know what? Anything is possible. If it took the Red Sox 86 years to win the World Series, anything's possible. And so at that point, I had been putting off competing. And so that was my like impetus to be like, you know what? Anything's possible. So that's what I always say. And since then, the Red Sox have gone on to win the World Series 3 more times. So I ask you, what's possible for you, right? If you feel like I've been dieting for 86 years and why I'm give up, the Red Sox won the World Series in 2004. So keep going. All right. So how can challenges be eliminated? The only way you can deal with a challenge is to deal with it, right? We can't, as much as we want to throw it in the closet, lock the door and walk away. It's always going to tap us on the shoulder and be like, hey girl, hey girl, hey. And the more we ignore it, the more it's just going to grow and grow and build, because you know how our brains are, right? You know, something starts as like a pebble and eventually turns into this giant boulder in our shoe. So what you have to think to yourself is that overcoming anything that comes your way, you have to enjoy it to make it easier. And so focus on what's within your power, right? What can you do? You know, because so many of us focus on all the things that are outside of our power. It's like, oh, if I had more money, if I had more this, blah, blah, blah. Well, what do you have, right? You know, it's kind of like those chef contests. Is it Iron Chef? Correct me if I'm wrong, that they're like, okay, you have a avocado, a pineapple, and a steak. Make something, right? That's what I want you to think about your problems. Like, what do you have? Like, what's within your reach right now? And deal with it. You know, it's like, the more I'm able to just, think here on my feet, the more I'm able to overcome it a little easier. So as we go through, what are the challenges that we overcome? Well, the biggest thing that so many people tell me is that they feel like failures, right? They've tried before, they've gone keto and paleo and all the oleos that you could possibly gone. And they're like, and guess what? Like me, or that hard 75. And they're like, I didn't make it. I didn't last. So it's like, how do you take that failure and turn it into a lesson? Like, what was it about it? And as you know, I work, I always ask people to like work from what I call the reps, right? So let's, whatever the failure you had in that diet or nutrition or workout program, like, was it realistic for you? Were you excited about what you were going to do, what you were going to eat? Could you make a plan for it in your life? And was it sustainable? Because if any of those 4 things weren't in play, of course you were going to fail, right? And so I always challenge my clients to ask themselves those 4 questions, because the more I can ask myself the questions ahead of time, the more I can start to anticipate challenges, anticipate things that might come up so that I can, find a plan around it, or see if there's a tweak that I could make to make it more agreeable to me, right? I look at diets and programs and all that as a rough structure where I need to mold it to me, because when you make me say I can't do something, then all of a sudden I want it. It could be the healthiest thing on the planet. When I was competing, as we got closer to the show, certain fruits became a little bit more, I couldn't have them as often as I could have other fruits. And I love apples. I pretty much eat an apple every day. And so so as we got closer to the show, I could only have an apple after I worked out. And I remember I was in Marshall's and I saw this woman, she was eating an apple. I could have like hopped over the counter and taken her out for her darn apple, right? So think about, what are some of the things that you failed at and how do we turn them into lessons so that we can, the next time we come up with that, how do you circle yourself around it? And, here's where we need to just recognize that change is inevitable. Like you can't escape it. And you can't always control it, right? I get it. I am an A++ control freak in recovery. I always wanted to know everything, schedule everything, and you just can't sometimes. And for the most part, you have to face the facts that like change will be easier if you know that you can't handle everything, right? That you have to sometimes roll with the punches and, be able to like push away the fearful thoughts of like, when you can't control it and just be like, you know what? Take a deep breath. And, one of my favorite sayings is that if it was meant for me, it will not pass me by. And it just kind of like is my like soothing mantra, if you will, that helps me to kind of just like take a deep breath and start to be able to when I take a deep breath, I slow down, I'm able to make better decisions. And when you're able to make better decisions, then you get better outcomes. One of the other big things I hear from people is that I'm not motivated when it comes to working out. I'm not motivated when it comes to losing weight. Well, why aren't you motivated? And going back to what I said before, are you choosing things that are hard, right? I had a client who we were working together, and she, when you first start working with me as a private client, I ask you to give me a food journal, and it helps me to see what's going on, what's happening with you. We talked on the phone, we were a great match, but your food log and your workout log tell me, okay, what are you actually doing? So that way I know how to make the tweaks and how I can best support you moving forward. And so she struggled with creating this food log. And so, we started coming up with different things to do. I'm like, well, why don't you just track your protein? Or why don't you just, what's the easiest thing for you to track? Can you just start tracking your water? Just starting to kind of like, to take off feeling the pressure of a food log. And then, a week later, I see her post on Facebook. She's like, I'm all into the 75 hard. And I was like, intriguing. You were having trouble logging your food, but this 75 hard you can do. And so in our call, I was like, help me understand how you're able to do the 75 hard when tracking food was a challenge for you. And she was like, well, there's, and she didn't have a great comeback. And I asked her, okay, is everything that the 75 hard is asking you to do, is it realistic for you? Are you excited about it? Can you make a plan for it in your life? And is it sustainable? Right. And so one of the biggest things I have about the 75 hard is that every time you miss something, you have to go back to the beginning. And so if you have this fear of failure, it's going to make you feel like a failure when you miss one thing. Right. So I want you to think about why you don't have the motivation to take action. Why do you keep procrastinating on something? And because when we analyze the source of the problem, then we can start to devise a plan to see how things get made. And also see what success looks for. Like, what is success? Like, again, I keep helping you say this. We have to get clear. Like, what exactly does success look like for you? Because the more we can define it, the more we're able to get excited around it and start to plan it. And start to plan around that. And so how do we, what are some of the traits that help you out? And I have like 5 steps of how to help you kind of, face this challenge moving on. The first part, clarity, right? I've said it before. You have to get clear on what it is that you are trying to accomplish so that when a challenge comes up, you know where you're going. So it's like if I got in the car here in Boston and I'm trying to get to LA and I'm taking the northern route, okay, I know the route I'm taking. And if a snowstorm is coming to Chicago, okay, great. I know I'm going to divert around it, right? So I can start to think about what is the alternative if something gets in my path, right? The second place is courage. I have to know that I can bounce back from my setbacks and my obstacles. And that's what we talked about earlier. We have that resilience tank, that is just waiting for us to say, you know what, we've faced this before. Let's go into that tank, grab out some of that courage, grab out some of that grit, and flow with this and stand up to whatever's coming our way. We also have to get a little creative, and start to really focus on living in the present moment and stop worrying about what happened, 2 years ago, 2 months ago, hell, 2 hours ago, because that helps reduce the stress so you can deal with the challenge that's right in front of you today. And get curious, right? Ask yourself questions. So many times I see clients and they will keep doing the same things over and over again, right? Or they'll seeking more information. Well, I need more information. Well, you haven't taken action on what you've currently done. You haven't been able, once I take action on what I've currently done, then I can say, oh, I need a little bit more of this. I think about it as a recipe, right? You're making something and like you taste it and you're like, I think I need a little bit of something. You're like, oh, maybe it needs a little more salt, maybe there's a little more pepper. But until I actually put all the ingredients together, I don't know that I need more salt. And so many people stay uncurious, instead of actually taking the information that they accumulate, they just keep accumulating it. And they have more books on the shelf or more downloads on their hard drive. So keep asking questions and seek information that's going to help you overcome the obstacles, but you got to take action. That's the only way you're going to ever know what you are missing. And calm. All right. This is the place where I know it took me a long time to come to this place where it's so easy for emotions to be hot, emotions to just flare up. But here is where you have to take that breath and you have to, when I take that breath, it helps me become focused and allows me to think clearly about the situation, balance out my emotions and react to them in a more, rational versus an emotional way. And I know for a lot of people, when I work with my clients and they're like, oh my God, and this and this and this and this. And I'm like, let's breathe. And I want to be the voice of reason when I'm talking to my clients, because I know that in the moment, you're so emotional that it's really hard for you to kind of pull yourself out of the situation. And that's what I think that's one of my biggest strengths, is that I'm able to just be like that calm voice of reason. And I know, a lot of my clients are fitness competitors. And so, you're getting ready for a show and you're like, oh my God. And I'm like, let's just breathe. And let's just focus and let's just figure out some stuff so that we're not all coming from this emotional place. And I know for some girls, it makes them crazy that I'm like, okay, let's just calm down, because they're like, they want me to go there with them. And as a coach, I can't go there with you. My job is to help you through the thickness of the forest, not just be in the forest, be like, oh my God, yeah, there are a lot of trees here too. What the hell? No, we need to be able to, as a coach, you need to be able to help them take the deep breath, calm down, and start to say, okay, what's the plan? How, let's formulate a plan. And like I said, as a coach, that's where I come in and I help you to get honest with yourself so that you can start to find that peace and that ease and ultimately get that confidence, right? Get the confidence that says, you know what? I know I can rely on my own strengths, my own gifts to achieve my goals, and that you feel self-assured, self-reliant, moving forward, facing other obstacles. And, lastly, it's, I talk about resilience, belief that things are going to work out, belief that I'm going to keep trying until I solve this problem, and belief that you have what it takes to overcome that situation, right? That's perseverance. That's grit, and I'll leave you with this one last thought. There's this poem that I always remember when I feel like, a lot of people will tell me that they feel like they're in this endless loop, right? They feel stuck. And this poem, it's called Autobiography in 5 Short Chapters. It's by Portia Nelson, and I'll put a link in the show notes. But this poem, like, it just, the first time I heard it, I was just like, oh my God, this is exactly what I need to hear. And so whenever I feel like I'm in that kind of like infinite loop of like, I can't, find my butt with both hands, this is where I come back to. And so it starts with, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but it starts with, I walk down the street, there's a deep hole in the sidewalk, I fall in. I'm lost, I'm hopeless. It isn't my fault. It will take forever to find a way out. Right. And then it goes on to talk about goes on to talk on and on about this hole and all the various things about this hole. And so this is where I'm like, you know what? That's exactly what it is. Some of us, go follow the same nutrition program over and over and over again. And we expect different results. And every time we try it, we get we fall into the same damn hole and we feel lost. We feel hopeless. So here's where I challenge you, right? Have the courage to break free. Have the courage to start to develop some stronger habits that'll create better routines, and those routines will lead to that consistency, and it's a consistency that will ultimately lead to your results, right? That's how we face our challenges, and we start to build that grit, right? That exemplifies a character so that that you can overcome any of life's challenges. So let me know how this is resonating with you. Do me a favor. Shoot me. You can find me on the socials. I am Kim Jefferson Coach on Instagram, and I am Kim Barnes Jefferson Coach on Facebook. So please let me know how this is landing with you. And if there's someone who needs to hear this, absolutely tag them on this podcast. All right, Magic Makers, thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening to the Fit Girl Magic podcast. If you've made it this far, yay. I'm thinking you enjoyed the show. Let's continue the conversation on Instagram. You can find me at Kim Jefferson Coach. In order for me to keep sharing this message, do me a favor and leave me a 5-star review on iTunes. While you're there, don't forget to subscribe so that you won't miss an episode. New episodes are available every Wednesday. The Fit Girl Magic podcast is intended to provide you with tips, tools, and strategies that will help you make better decisions about your health. I really appreciate your feedback and your support. Thank you so much.